Welcome back, my beautiful scoliosis family. Have I got a treat for you today? We are going to be talking all about scoliosis and running, going into detail about body mechanics and how scoliosis affects us whilst we're running, but also whilst we're walking and moving in general. So it's going to be beneficial for you whether you are a runner or not. And to help us out today, I'm going to be interviewing a running specialist, someone who has a degree in sports therapy and experience working with a variety of people, from football players to elderly. He also has 6 years experience in the military as an exercise rehab specialist, so he really knows his stuff. He is currently one of the best personal trainers and educators in Western America, and he's currently opening a gym in Vancouver known as Kinculture. I bring to you Richard Poole. So welcome, Richard, to the Feel Good Spine podcast. I am so happy and excited to have you here, and I know a bunch of my followers and subscribers are really excited to learn about running and learn about how we can run better and look after and maintain our scoliosis at the same time. So this is going to be really, really interesting. Before we get started with our questions, I will just give you a moment to say hi and give us a little introduction about yourself.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I've been wanting to be on this for ages, just jealous of everyone else who's on it so far. So little bit of an intro about me. I graduated with a degree in sports therapy about 10, 12 years ago now. So a long time ago. Worked in that industry for 7 years, 8 years in the UK, working in professional sport, working in our NHS system, and then working for the military for 6 years. That was great fun. I loved it. But I started to get a little bit bored in the UK. So I was like, okay, what's next? I need to explore. Moved over to Canada.
Yeah,
Found out about Equinox. Found out about Equinox and was like, okay, so I know a lot about treating people, making people better with exercise, helping people's injuries. Can I do that when people aren't injured and with just general population? And so I decided to take up personal training and haven't looked back since. Started becoming an educator in Equinox, so I was training the new trainers coming through. Then decided at the midway through COVID, decided to break away from that and start to do my own stuff. So me and a business partner, Sean, we've decided to go ahead and open our own space. We really want to focus on longevity of training. So training into the aging population. Everyone in the world's aging. The population is getting older. We want people to train for a long time, and we want people to be able to have fun in their life and do things that they want to do physically. That's really what kinculture is all about. Train for longevity and be strong as you age.
Yeah, awesome. So I'll just pop in and add that Rich was he actually trained me when I joined at Equinox. He was my master trainer. So I remember sitting through hours and hours and hours of lectures.
Fun, banter.
Lots of banter about anatomy and just lots of really, really cool stuff. So this is one of the people that I actually learned some of the things that I talk about today from. And he currently runs a run club as well in Vancouver. So that is where I have also learned a lot about running. So this is what's kind of led us onto where we are today, because he loves to run and he's super passionate about it and knows lots of interesting stuff. So we are going to get into that now. So I'm going to start. First question. Let's just keep it nice and simple. What is running? What are the psychological effects? What are the physiological effects? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so for me, running, when I was younger, I never got on with running. I never found it fun. I had to find that fun as I grew a bit older, and as I started to dig into it, I found out a lot more about what running is. And like I said, when I first started, I thought, okay, running is just about doing these long, slow runs, building your aerobic capacity. It's just an aerobic sport. And then I thought to myself, is it actually? When one of the biggest watched event in the Olympics is the 100-meter sprint. And that is the most gangster thing going. I love watching 100-meter sprinters. You know that Usain Bolt rumored to have scoliosis as well.
It's
Got
not a
another.
rumor, it's for real.
Yeah, it's for real.
It's for
Okay,
real,
okay,
for real.
cool. Okay, I'll tell you another fact about that guy later on.
Okay.
But yeah, so the physiological effects is there's a lot of good that happens for your heart, for your lungs, cardiovascular, respiratory. There's evidence to show that people who stay active, not just running, but live longer, live healthier, and it kind of it merges together with a whole healthy lifestyle, a healthy balance of lifestyle. We'll talk about how you can program running in the later on, and how about it's not just an all or nothing thing. There is a way to structure how you would run. In terms of psychological help, it really has helped me. At the moment, I feel super stressed with the amount of work that I have on. But then when I go for a run, it helps me clear my head, for starters, so I can actually be away from technology. I usually run with no music, so I can be away completely from technology, got no notifications, and I can just have my own thoughts, think, what have I got going on? What's going on through the day? And yeah, it really helps calm me, set me and ground me. That's one of the biggest loves I've found for running recently. I Even when I do my slower, longer runs, I don't tend to wear a watch because I think it's a bit off-putting. But then when you get onto the faster runs, I love to wear my watch, but I keep it super basic. Don't have an Apple Watch, so no notifications on it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just something to keep me aware of my pace. And yeah, that's something that's something that's super important when you start to go down the rabbit hole of running. It's changing and varying how you run and what energy systems you can tap into.
Yeah, we'll definitely be coming on to that, I'm sure. I just wanted to add, I think that's really, really cool that you run without any music. Like
Yeah.
I was listening to a podcast the other day about this lady was saying to just go outside for a walk or for a run and not listen to any music or anything. And I thought, oh my God, I've never done this before. And literally yesterday, I went for a walk. It was stunning in Vancouver, blue skies. And I'm like, okay, I need to go outside. And I didn't have any music or anything. And I was just like walking around, listening to the birds and like the trees and the leaves and all that stuff. I was like, do you know what? Like nature is really, really nice. And it is good to just have that time with your thoughts and your feelings and just outside of technology. So yeah.
Yeah. That's huge for me. I've tried to stay off social media as much as possible. I've only just recently got onto it for the business. And I honestly I find myself way more on my phone nowadays. And if I can get out, if I can get away, even if it's like you said, even if it's for a walking and running, they're very similar. You can use walking in running. In your programming for running, I use walking all the time. There's a lot of evidence that shows people who run marathons and run, and people who just run, slow run, and their similar abilities finish at a similar time.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
walk run is a great way of how to slower the load, and we'll talk about that in terms of scoliosis as well a bit later, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So coming on to my next question, I wanted to ask you about the body mechanics of running and how this might affect someone that does have scoliosis.
Yes, so I'm no expert on scoliosis as you are, but what I know from it is you can have an impacted lung capacity when you're dealing with scoliosis because of the curvature of the spine. You can't expand your lungs as much as um, other people without scoliosis. So that's one impact that may have on running. But if you can work on that and you can work on breathing, breath work, specifically into areas where you're tightened up. So for me as well, like I've been dealing with an upper back issue recently, and I went through a lot of breathing exercises into my upper back. And as soon as I finished the session, I felt great. I felt like I had more space for my lungs to come. And that's essentially that's going to really help with your running. So increasing the having the ability to increase your lung size is going to help you with running. People might feel that they get out of breath quickly, but honestly, it's just a case of practicing the breathing when you're not running, but then also just getting involved and doing this run. But then, so if we've started with your inside, we'll go out. We'll go a bit more into musculoskeletal system. So you have to have adequate hip flexion and extension. So it's not just the case of length in both of them. So it's not just a case of having really long hip flexors or really long glutes. It's more than that. It's having a strength through that range. So without adequate hip flexion, we can't lift our knee up, and then that may prevent us from clearing the ground with our foot. So we'll find more of a shuffle, or we'll adapt our gait. So we may kick round the side to lift our leg up instead. So we've got to really find adequate strength into our hip flexors. Then when you're talking about your hip extensors, so your glutes predominantly, that's the kicking back. That's the force that you're trying to create to kick yourself off the floor. Then you go down into the ankle and you think about that range that you've got to get your dorsiflexion. So you've got to have the ability to lift your toes off the ground to clear the ground when you're stepping through. But you've also got to have the ability to push through to propel yourself as much as you need to go forward. So there's no precise number, but it's just something to be conscious of. Am I changing the way I walk or run because I've got tight hips, tight glutes, tight ankles? And then we go down to the foot, and the foot is something I'm really big on at the moment. I just recently did a gait course, and it was about 16 hours just learning about the foot, and it was a lot. It was a lot, but it was good fun. And one of the main things is that the foot has to have the ability to move as well. So your foot actually acts as the body's first shock absorber. So you've got your plantar fascia here under your foot. If that can't flatten, or if it's already in a flattened state, it's no longer to flatten at all, your foot's not going to be able to do its job effectively. So that shock is going to go through the rest of the body. For most people, it goes through the knees and the hips. And then for people with scoliosis, if the curvature in their spine, that's going to increase the amount of torsion that's put upon and force that's put upon the spine, which can be a negative thing. So it's very important we build from the ground up and we really look into the function of the foot before we really look into anything else.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And that really leads me on nicely to explaining like just a little bit more about the feet. Why are they so important? How do they affect the rest of the body? Because one thing I really noticed with scoliosis is that ones we tend to have like one foot that is flatter, one foot that has a little bit more of an arch. It's very imbalanced. One knee can rotate in a little bit more. One hip is higher than the other. Yeah, help us.
No, yeah. Okay, so there's really no evidence to show that there's a bad foot position. There's evidence that shows that there's the damage comes when you have a rigid foot. So if you've got a foot with a high arch, but you can get into a flat foot and then you can get back into the high arch, great. If you've got a flat foot and you've got the strength to create an arch and then get back into a flat foot, also great. That's fine. Being able to get in and out of ranges is what we want to do. If they become too rigid and it's painful to create an arch, or you have the inability to create an arch and it's painful to flatten your foot, then that's where we want to look at first. So if you've got a different foot to foot, if you've got a high arch one foot and you struggle to flatten it, then that side you've got to really work the mobility into that foot. You get a golf ball underneath, warm up that plantar fascia, and then you just load it with your body weight forcing it into a flat foot. But then you just do the opposite on the other foot. You have a flat foot and you squeeze your foot together. So you're squeezing your big toe, your little toe, and your heel together as much as possible. And you're trying to create that arch. And if you can't do that, then we just work and we strengthen that. It's about just creating that arch whilst you're keeping your big toe and your little toe down.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's really, really interesting for myself and for my followers, because one of the things with anxiety is just noticing all these little differences on one side to the other, but just knowing that that is totally fine as long as you can still move and have range of motion and not have pain. Then those little indifferences are actually that they're fine. And you know what? Lots of people without scoliosis also have these things. So it kind of just goes for everyone to just make sure that you have very good foot mobility. And if you do follow me on Instagram, you will see me rolling my feet. And I do get this from Rich. I have it drilled into me from Run Club. Using a golf ball or just a small little like kind of solid ball, rolling it against your feet. Give it a go if you haven't already. It might be painful, but I promise you it's going to feel good in the long run anyway.
Feels good. Don't go into sharp pain. That's the one thing. Go light, ease into it. Be able to relax, be able to breathe through it, relax. But it's funny you say about like imbalances as well, because I talked about earlier the tight hips or tight glutes, or the inability to extend the hip, inability to flex the hip. With people with scoliosis, you might find that the same. You've got your tight one hip and you're loose the other hip.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So what we want to be able to do is assess that as well, and you work through the strengthening and more strengthening on one side and maybe more lengthening on the other side. And when you run, what actually happens when you have scoliosis is there's more force goes through it. If it's curved like that, more force will go through one side when you plant your foot. Some people with scoliosis find that their cadence is a bit pa rather than pa.
Yeah, 100% me for sure.
Yeah, but honestly, don't worry too much about it. What you've got to do is you've got to use the exercises outside of running, but in the gym to correct that. You're not gonna, if you try and correct your gait whilst you're running and your tempo whilst your cadence, whilst you're running, then that's going to affect things further down the chain or higher up the chain. So roll with your cadence. Let the work you do outside of running fix that, and just continue to run the way you do. Make sure you do the warm up, the correct warm up, strengthening, lengthening, activating, and make sure you do an adequate cool down. So that's going to be the key.
Yeah, that's good. That kind of brings me on to my next question. So let's say that we've just inspired someone to get up and run. Tell us why it is not a good idea to just get out of bed and go for a run straight away. Like, why should we be warming up? Why should we be cooling down?
Yeah, I mean, when you're like in your teens, or if you're 20 or something, you can do that. You can do that. It will catch up with you. Like, honestly, I didn't get injured, and I swear I didn't even warm up until I got to probably in my 30s. And I've never had an injury. Then I was like, rocked up to play football one day when I was in my late 20s, this was. And I was like, yeah, I'll turn up bang on time. I don't need to warm up. I'm English. I'm playing with Canadians. No, sorry if that's anyone takes offense to that, but England's is coming home. So yeah, basically, I came onto the pitch 2 minutes in, tore my groin.
Oh
So
God.
where has this come from? I was like, you need to take care of your body. You need to start warming up. I'd never taken care of my body until I got into my late 20s, started at Equinox, and such a huge focus on warming up your body. It's not just a case of warming up your core temperature. That's what we often think about warming up. We go for a light little run and that's our warm up done. What my love is to get the blood flowing into the areas that are going to be the most active. So like you said, golf ball rolling your foot, you're stimulating the foot and you're telling your brain, look, this is about to go and do some work now. Let's get this mobile. Let's get it active if we're doing some strengthening prep work, because it's going to start working. Just do the same with your calves and your tibs, so the back of your bottom leg and the front of your bottom leg. Get them, the warm-ups that you should be doing should replicate the sport or the activity that you're going to do. So for running, we're really thinking about the foot rolling into pronation a little bit. So get that pronation if you're high arch. If you're flat-footed, working to get in that high. If you're flat-footed, working to get in that high arch. Work into the mobility around the ankle, the lifting the toes up, the dorsiflexion, or the pushing the toes away from you, plantar flexion. So doing calf raises or toe lifts when you're facing away from the wall. Then you got to go into the thing that's really going to drive you is around the hips. So you're not just pushing down on the floor when you run. Think of it like a cyclist. So high level cyclists, they pull up and push down at the same time. So they're constantly going round. So they're pulling their back leg and they're pushing their front leg down. We want to think about that in running as well. Like, why are we not lifting our leg off and driving our knee forward to run? You see a lot of joggers out there just get lazy with that. So for me, it's a case of warming up those high knee exercises is really key for a majority of novice runners and beginner runners, because that's not what you see a lot of people doing. Then you've got and if you have the ability to do that, but you also have the ability to kick your foot down, then the rest is just going to happen. At the knee, you're going to feel yourself kick your butt, maybe the faster you go. So we want that tissue to be warm and lengthened, so we can get into those ranges.
Yeah.
But warming up is for me, it's mobilizing, it's activation. Then we'll go into a bit more of a core temperature warming up. So it's not as simple as saying, why do we need to warm up? It's why should we activate? Why should we lengthen, activate, warm up, then drill in what we're doing? So if you come to a run club, you'll see that we do all of that in that order. And yeah, it's really to avoid injury first and foremost, but it's also to prep the body for the work it's about to do.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And I just wanted to add in, for my runners with scoliosis, and when you're cooling down, I mean, obviously cooling down is really, really important as well, but trying to throw in a little bit of traction. So because when you're running, you're constantly compressing the spine as the forces work against you when you're planting your foot against the floor. So getting in maybe a minute or 2 minutes of traction towards the end of your run, just to lengthen and decompress the spine, is going to be really, really good for you guys. So just throwing that one in there as well.
I would also say that maybe a bit of breath work would help afterwards as well.
Yeah.
Trying to expand the lungs as much as possible, like we touched on earlier. I think that's really important for people with scoliosis, and I think that will tie in hand with what you just said about the traction.
Yeah, and obviously, if you follow me on Instagram, you know I'm always talking about concavity breathing, and that is essentially what Rich is saying as well. But in relation to scoliosis, concavity breathing is trying to focus that breath into your concave side And if you don't know what side that is the side where your ribs are more compressed and your lung capacity is reduced. So when you finish your run, try and do a little bit of traction, try and do a little bit of concavity breathing. Hopefully you're doing these things every day anyway, but just especially throwing in some of that towards the end of your run. Which also brings me on to my next question, just asking about the best form and best technique for running, because obviously technique and form is very important. And with running, if you're doing it incorrectly, you can cause a lot of rotation through the spine, especially if you're crossing the arms over and it's all over the place, which we, especially with scoliosis, we do not want to be getting all of that rotation through the spine, and it's just going to aggravate our scoliosis. So give us some tips on running technique.
Yeah, cool. So you're, like you just said, like, you want to keep solid here. You want to keep solid here. That's where your power comes from, your core. Your power comes from there. So if you have the ability to be able to have your arms cradled forwards and backwards, that's great. You'll see sprinters do it the best. Sprinters are they're a great example of how we should be running. It's very extreme how they run, but they're running at stupid rates. So with that, you're thinking about having a lean forward. Let gravity do some of the work for you. Like, gravity's here, gravity's not going anywhere. Let it do some work for us for once. So have that little bit of a lean forward. Then what we want to create is a knee drive up from there. So like I said about the hip flexion, and you'll see that again, if you pull out any picture of any sprinter, any high level sprinter, their knee drive is insane. It also translates to, like, Kipchoge is the fastest marathon runner ever, only person to ever break 2 hours. You look at his stride, and his stride is similar. He's still got that knee drive. It's not excessive as Usain Bolt. He's still got that kick up at the back, so his foot nearly hits his butt on the way through. So we want to think about that. But what will get us there naturally is that knee drive. But then when you contact the ground, you don't want to be contacted in front of your center of gravity, because then that's going to act as a brake for us. So we really want that lean forward. We want to drive our knee up, but we want to push on or slightly behind our center of gravity. So we're really pushing from our mid and forefoot. We really shouldn't be striking too much with our heel, because that will be acting as a brake. So if you feel you're like plodding along and you just feel your heels, honestly, just try leaning forward. Try leaning forward from your hips, and your shoulders come with you. Your shoulders aren't leading the way, your hips are probably leading the way. But then if you're able to keep that solid core, like you've talked about, Claude, and to prevent you rotating, then your shoulders are going to go with you anyway. And then we think about what our legs are doing in that stage. If we have the ability to lift up our knee, then we should have the ability to clear the floor with our foot. And that's why we also work on lifting those toes up, those toe raise exercises. So you can lift the toe up, clear your foot from the ground, so you don't have to turn out like this. And this is what a lot of people turn out when they walk. A lot of people, and people with like bunions on their big toe or calluses on their big toe, that'll be because they've got an inability to probably dorsiflex their foot. So they cheat and they like come around like that. And if you're doing that in walking, then that's probably going to translate to running. So be aware of that dorsiflexion, like a knee to wall stretch is a good one to like focus on, as well as some loaded bent knee calf raises. Yeah, so technique is the best thing, in my opinion. Lean forward, lift your knees up, strike the floor with your forefoot and not your heel. If I was going to say 3 things.
Yeah. No, I think that's awesome. That's really, really good advice. And I'm already already thinking about my running form and how I can improve it, because I'm already like thinking, yep, I do that with my foot, and yep, I don't push from here. And so I really hope that all of my listeners are also thinking about their running form, and then I want to try it. Like I might go for a run tomorrow and just test this all out. So I hope
Yeah.
that yeah.
What I'd also give you people a task of doing is count how many steps they do in. I don't care about the how the pattern of the steps, but count how many steps you do in a minute. So what we really want to do, we want to faster cadence. That's called that's a cadence. How many steps in a minute you do? If you can do 180 steps in a minute, that's decent.
Wow.
Decent. Yeah, but something above 160 is good. 160 is a decent amount of steps. But 180 is the aim. 3 steps in a second.
Wow. That is a lot of steps.
It's a
So
lot of
yeah,
steps. It's a
you
lot of
hit
steps.
there's some homework for you guys now to count your steps.
Yeah, 10,000 steps.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on. Is it safe for someone with scoliosis to run long distances? Big question in the industry. What are your thoughts on this?
My thoughts are, as long as you're strong and as long as you've optimally loaded, then yeah, you're good. You're good to go. And long distance is like, what is long distance? Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like for me, when I first started running, long distance was 5K. My goal was to get a decent 5K time. Long distance, long distance can even be shorter than that. As long as you're hitting that aerobic um, energy system, that's a really essentially a long distance run. You you want progressive overload is what you want to try and achieve and work with to guide you in how far you can run. But so progressive overload really means take. So there's an analogy you can use. As a growing, there was this Greek story, I believe,
Here
and
we
this
go.
one, you know it, you remember it.
Probably.
Okay, so it was this kid. He grew up with his calf, a cow, and so as he aged, so did the calf. As he grew, so did the calf. So he got bigger, the calf got bigger. This is really saying the further you go, the further your body can go. So if you take it step by step, slowly, they're progressively loading it more. He's getting stronger and bigger. This cow was getting bigger because he's aging and getting older, but this person's still got the ability to be able to carry this cow. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a really good analogy. I like that.
Yeah, I think it's Greek mythology, that is.
Wow. Who would have known?
Yeah, who'd have known?
Okay. So moving on. What would you say are the common injuries with running, and how can we overcome them?
Um, I think one of the most common injuries you'll see is Achilles problems. And a way to deal with this, if it hasn't happened already, is to have the ability to load your Achilles well. So, single leg, starting with double leg calf raises is a great exercise to incorporate if you want to start running. You have to have the ability to be able to do multiple single leg calf raises to be able to run. But if we're starting from the beginning, we're thinking again about progressive overload. Let's start low, let's start easiest. We go straight leg calf raises. But what people tend to do is when they do calf raises and they're not strong yet, is they go out onto their little toes. What I want people to think about doing is pressing equal pressure through their big toe, little toe, but even maybe dominating that big toe. So you sort of get a calf raise where you sort of feel like you're pulling your legs together a little bit. What you might feel is some tension in your groin. That's great because when we run, our groin acts to stabilize us. Our groin and our glute med do all that great work to stabilize our hip when we're like driving through the ground. So to avoid any Achilles issues, strengthen your calf, strengthen your gastroc, lengthen your calf, lengthen your gastroc by strengthening the opposite side of the of the of the leg, so the shin, that shin bone. So then that also leads on to people with shin splints. Shin splints is a common one that people get, and usually shin splints is an overuse injury. That's people who aren't using this progressive overload. They're just hammering themselves straight in. It usually happens in like people coming into their 20s. And when I worked in the military, we had it a lot with the new recruits. So the new recruits are just absolutely hammered for running and weighted walking. And then the amount of people who were getting shin splints because they were loading themselves too much was crazy. So that's an optimal loading thing. That's getting them to learn about this progressive overload, slowly ramping it up. Then people suffer from a lot of knee and hip issues. And what we touched on earlier, if you work from the bottom up and you can increase that mobility or that strength in the foot, then you might find that you can really potentially get rid of these issues that are coming in the knee and the hip. My other key thing would be strengthen around the hip, strengthen the glutes, strengthen and lengthen the hip flexors, and you should be good. When I first started running longer distances, I used to get like lower backache because my back would just be doing everything because I had no core strength. So if you're starting to feel it in your back, think what's going on at the front. Are you extending from your lumbar spine a little bit too much? Can you lock that down? And especially for people with scoliosis, that's going to be super important.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, very interesting. And yeah, I think just everything leads back to having a strong core and a strong glutes, which which kind of like leads me on to my next question is like, what supplements can we do for running to help the body, help keep the body strong, and help obviously with people with scoliosis reduce their chances of injury?
Yeah. Okay. So I think you talked about the breath work. Honestly, Claude, I think everything that you do on your Instagram is like bang on. If people can follow that outside of running and in the gym, they're going to have a strong, resilient body where they've got the ability to run.
Yeah. Do you hear that one, guys? Do you hear that one?
It's true. I don't want to overcomplicate things, and I honestly don't think I need to. I think if you follow the exercises that you've put in, the breath work, the core strengthening, the glute strengthening, and then I don't know if you put any Achilles, gastroc, or tib ant work on there, but that if I was to add anything for running, it would be calf strength and front of your calf strength, so shin strength. Yeah,
getting some content ideas. Love it.
Yeah. Otherwise, honestly, your content is quality.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
We do also have to be able to make sure that we've got elastic Achilles. So a little bit of like 2-footed bounce jumping would be good after you've warmed up, maybe before you go for running is good. We're doing mini plyometrics when we run, really. So little short contact times with the floor, little bounds, bang, 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 bang is always good. Do about 20 seconds of those before you do any sort of running, and you've got some blood flow to that Achilles.
Yeah, that's actually, I love doing those things because it's also kind of fun. It kind of takes you back to being like a kid when you're just like bouncing around. It like gives you energy.
It feels super childish. You're doing it with a bunch of adults, and you're like, people are looking at us like, what are they doing? But yeah, you can do it. You can play catch whilst you're doing it as well if you want.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. Okay, so coming to the end, I'm going to ask you one more question, and then I'm going to come to a couple of questions that I had from my followers on my Instagram. Before I come to that, just to summarize, like, what are the pros of running? Why should my followers start running?
Get outside. We've touched on most of the key points. Get outside, get away from technology. Honestly, as you as you age, you're gonna feel like your aerobic capacity is going to reduce slightly. Get it, keeping yourself healthy. People with scoliosis, the encouragement is, I believe, to exercise more frequently. You don't want to be sedentary. As soon as we stop doing things, that's when we age. So it's like famous saying from one of my mates. He says, "You don't get old because you don't stop snowboarding because you get old. You get old because you stop snowboarding." So we can just relate that to running as well. And running's really one of those strange sports where actually it's people in their 30s who are world champions. There's actually been studies shown that an 18-year-old track athlete who's been running all their life is still got about 10 years until their peak. So they got 10 years until they're 28. They were at 18. How long do you think it will take them to get back down? And if they're still training, to continue to be that good? They'll potentially be what age when they can still beat or compete with their 18-year-old self?
32.
No, 64.
Oh.
So it shows that we're meant to run. So if you're thinking, what can I do as I age? You can run, because we're meant to run. We're built to run. We across any given distance, so like a long distance, we're faster than any other animal on this planet.
Oh wow, that's cool. That's really
and
cool.
Is it one of the reasons is, and one of the reasons why you should continue to do breath work is because we as humans don't cool ourselves down through our breath. Every other animal on this planet cools them down from their breath. We sweat. So if you can use your great ability to breathe to focus on your running, you don't need to focus on that to cool you down. You're not panting like a dog to cool yourself down. You're sweating to cool yourself down. So yeah, that's one of the reasons we can outrun any animal on this planet.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Over a given distance.
Every day's a school day. Love that. Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to come on to some questions from my followers on Instagram. Some really interesting questions, actually. So I'm going to start with Chloe.ac. I think that's how you say your name. Can I run with shoe lift? Uneven leg lengths due to misalignment. So what are your thoughts on running with a shoe lift?
This is a really tough one, because is it a true unfixable leg length discrepancy? Is there some stuff that you've done on your social media that can help Chloe with that? Or is it a true leg length discrepancy? So I've worked with this guy when I worked in the military who actually got shot in the leg and it fractured his femur. So he lost 2 inches. 2 inches, it's a huge amount. He lost 2 inches of his femur. So every single one of his pairs of shoes, he had a 2-inch raise in every single one of his shoes. 2 inches is huge. That's going to put the alignment of his knees off, just to let his hips be aligned. And we got him running. We just had to be aware that he's not going to be able to tolerate as much, because it will feed in a little bit to his to his leg length discrepancy and stuff that's going on the knee and the hip if it's not loaded appropriately. So I would say yes, it's okay, but do everything in your power, exercise wise, that you can do to even reduce the amount of raise you need in a shoe, and then you can continue running.
Yeah.
So I would.
Sorry, you carry on.
Yeah. No, I would just say work on all of that before you can carry on running, but just don't load yourself too much.
Yeah, and I think it's true with scoliosis and leg length. differences, usually the leg length difference is functional, it's not structural. So if it's functional, it does mean that you can actually change it. If it's structural, you can't do anything about it. You're born with one leg shorter than the other or something like that. So yeah, it really is, you have to know, Chloe, whether or not you have a structural or functional leg difference. If it is structural, I would definitely stick with the shoe lift. But if it is functional, do everything in your power to try and even out your legs in the natural way.
And then make sure you cool down and warm up, and mostly cool down in the right way. The traction stuff that Claude talks about, and yeah, I think that's going to be the key for you if you want to continue to run.
Yeah, for sure.
When you continue to run.
Yes. Okay, so coming on to my next question, Carolina Cavalhera. What key aspects should we pay attention to run safe with scoliosis, so not increasing the curvature?
Yeah, so again, it's going to be about what you do outside of running. It's really not going to be what you're doing during the running, unless we're talking about your load and how frequently you're running. So don't just go and run in a 10K just without loading yourself. Load yourself appropriately. Do all the work that we've talked about. Do all the work that Claude's you've got people doing in the gym, and yeah, that's it's going to be safe. It's going to be fine.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll just add on to that as well. Do strengthen your core, strengthen your glutes, do your traction, do your concavity breathing, all those kind of things. And then you can really do whatever you want, run long distances, run short sprint. Like, I do all these things, and it's about looking after yourself outside of your running.
Yeah, it's funny. It's interesting you bring up the sprinting as well, because I was reading something about the faster you run and the more impact you put on to one side, you're gonna increase the force that goes into that curvature. But then on your second stride, you're actually gonna do the opposite. So you're actually gonna lengthen that side. So it becomes like a net. It's a net balance actually. Yeah. So you're compressing, but then when you take your next step, you're actually lengthening. So it's actually a net balance. So it's
there you go, guys.
It's okay. Yeah.
That makes sense, actually, thinking about it. Yeah, I love that. I never thought about that before. That's good to know. Cool. Okay, so question again from Carolina. Is there a distance after which it stops being safe, aka because you can't keep the ability to keep good posture?
Nope. No specific distance. Everyone's going to be different. Like we said, again, it's about how you load into it. I'm a big advocate of walk run programs. As soon as you feel any sort of aggravation or any pain, your body's an impressive thing. It's going to tell you if it's pissed off at you. So stop, go for a walk it off, they say. Go for another little jog, see how far you can get, and you note this down every time you're recording how far and how long you're going. And day to day, you're not gonna have a line like this. It's gonna be like this. It's gonna be wavy up. It's gonna wave up. It's not gonna be directly up. And no, simple answer to your question is no. There's not a given distance. There's not. It's just dependent. And if you do little and if you do little and slowly increase, you're gonna be able to run for a longer time because your body's gonna get stronger because of this progressive overload we talked about.
Yeah, awesome. Love that. Okay, one more question from Lily Alexandra. She messaged me saying that running has helped reduce her pain in her scoliosis, which I think is really, really awesome, and that she's training for a marathon now. Again, yes. Amazing. Well, congratulations, Lily. Does rotation of the spine hips impact breathing? And with one hip being higher than the other, can it lead to one foot hitting harder than the other?
Yeah. The short and easy answer for that is yes. And we've touched on all these points before. That rotation is going to affect how you breathe, but work on your what did you call it? What was your breathing?
Concavity breathing.
Yes, concavity breathing. I was going to call it 360 breathing, but work on your concavity breathing, work on how you can breathe into every aspect of your lungs and your diaphragm, and that's gonna help you. That really is going to help you. Especially if you do it after you run, because when you run, you will dominate one side when one area when you're breathing. So that's really going to increase that part and probably soften and lessen the other side. So that's when it's super important to do that breath work after and before.
Yeah.
What was the other point?
Um, with one hip
Oh,
being
the hip.
higher than the other, is one foot hitting the ground harder than the other?
Yeah, again, yes, and let that be okay, as long as you're doing all the stuff in the gym and after your run to counteract that. We talked about that before. Your cadence, what we call it, is going to be a little bit bap 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 rather than bap 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 bap, and that's just it probably is going to hit a little bit harder than the other. But as long as you do the pre work and the post work and then the stuff in the gym, you're going to be fine.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly what I would say as well. Yeah, just with the breathing thing, definitely doing your concavity breathing is going to help. And Lily, you also mentioned that you get pain in your middle of your back sometimes after running. And I just wanted to point out that this could be, depending on the curvature of your spine, this might be the transition zone. So with especially S-curve scoliosis, because the curvature is very immobile, there's one part of our spine, usually around the middle of the back, called the transition zone, that takes all of the force. It takes all of the rotation. It takes all of the frontal and sagittal plane movements, because the rest of our spine struggles to have any mobility. So I just wanted to say, when you're running, to just make sure that you're not doing too much rotation through your spine, because it sounds like this transition zone might be taking a lot of the rotation and the force. So just being aware of that and making sure that you're doing your scoliosis correctives and keeping your spine mobile and strong and all these things that we have talked about. So yeah, so I hope that helps, guys. Just wrapping up a little bit, tell us more about kin culture.
Oh yeah. Okay. So yeah, King Culture. It's a gym. Yes, representing the hat. How much you pay for that? Huh? She is English. Um. Yeah. So King Culture, we're due to open a actually a physical space in the new year. Hopefully March, if all goes to plan. They're doing the demolition at the moment of the space, and then we're putting up walls and stuff and making it into quite a sick space. We're going to have a lot of our focus is going to be on running, but then it's not solely going to be that. Our main aim is to get people active, get people doing stuff that they want to do. We live in Vancouver. We live in like an amazingly active city, but it doesn't have to be. You don't have to just be in Vancouver to be part of our community. We're going to be launching an app. We're going to have online training. We're going to have online running coaching. We're going to have access to all of that. So keep an eye on at kinculture.ca on Instagram. We might transition to TikTok very soon, but like I'm 35, so I don't know if I'm cut out for that. I might have to get some new lighting in my apartment and learn how to dance. But yeah, it's exciting stuff, and training for longevity is our key. That's everyone can teach people to exercise, everyone can make someone sweat, but we want to do it in a controlled way.
Yeah,
We want to train people, not exercise people.
love that. And I totally agree. Totally agree. It's not just about exercise, it's about everything in the body. Obviously, your fitness, your mindset, what you're eating, what you're putting into your body, what you're absorbing in the outside world, your friends, social media, all these little things. So it's good
Yeah,
to see all these businesses popping up, really paying attention to everything. And it's not just about how many bicep curls that you can do in the
yeah. And honestly, like it's about balance as well. As you know, like we can still have a drink, we can still go and enjoy ourselves, we can still go out for these meals with our friends. I was actually training my client at the beach this morning, and it was 6:30 a.m. and this 80-year-old walked past us. He probably looked 60. He looked so good, and he was like, "Do you know what the key is? Enjoy yourself." He's like, "People are too uptight these days. You just need to have a good time." And I was like, "Oh, you're a legend, mate. You should come and train at King Culture.
I should get him on my podcast.
You should get him." His name's Jack. His name's Jack. If you wanna get him in it.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. Oh, amazing. Well, yeah, if any of my listeners are in Vancouver, come and say hi. We're cool and we're fun, and we'll get you active and we'll get you moving around, and come and visit Kin Culture. It will be hopefully opening in 2023.
2023, definitely opening 2023.
Cool. Okay, well, everyone, I hope that you really got some value from this. Thank you so much to Rich for giving us his time and giving us so much knowledge. I definitely feel like I will be walking away smarter, so I hope that you guys will be as well. Do you have any last words, Rich?
I actually do, because I forgot to bring it up. I said I'd bring it up. The other special thing about Usain Bolt, not only has he got scoliosis, but he's got insane big toe mobility. And big toe mobility is key in everything, in all our walking gait, all our running gait. So it's not just foot mobility, it's big toe extension. He could actually get his toe up to 60 degrees. I'm sure you knew that already, Claude, but that's definitely my little bit of info I give at the end of every run club.
Oh, well, I love that. And I will yeah, now I've learned facts today.
Facts.
We've all learned
Facts.
facts. More Usain Bolt facts than I ever thought I would know. But you never know,
Yeah.
pub quiz, it might come up. So, retain that information.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming in, Rich. And thank you so much for my listeners. If you have held on this long, you guys are amazing. And yes, I look forward to continuing with my podcasts and filming more things for you guys. This has been really, really fun. So yes, thank you all so much. And I will speak to you soon. Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Nice one, Claude.